Hello everyone. Let us get started with another lecture on professional communication. Today we shall be discussing the etiquette of telecommunication. Now, first of all, let us try to understand as to what exactly telecommunication means. Now, this telecommunication can also be termed as telephonic communication or telephonic conversation. Now, telephonic conversation, the word telephone has been derived from two words. One is tele, which means long distances, and the other means the sound, voice, or speech. So the very first time that the word was used was phono, and then later on, as in with the time we evolved, the phono word got transformed to phone. So that is how the word telephone, wherein tele means long distances and phone means the sound, the voice, or the speech. So whatever kind of communication that is taking place by the means of a telephone happens to be the telephonic communication, telephonic conversation, or telecommunication in short. So here, as we've discussed in the process of communication, like for all other processes, it has two parties involved. One is the sender and the other is the receiver. So sender will be called as a person who's making a call. Receiver will be called as a person who's receiving the call, who's taking the call. Now, between the two parties, because the medium of exchanging the information that the sender has is done through a telephone, therefore it is termed as a telephonic conversation. And like other processes, this is nothing but sheer transmission of messages from one end to another end, and the instrument that is used, the channel or the medium that is used, is a telephone. Just a insight to the process of telephonic conversation or telecommunication. Again, we have a sender who has the information, who needs to pass this information on to a receiver. So this message that the sender has, which is the information that is to be communicated, is then given through the channel to the receiver. Now what is happening is, here the channel would be a telephone. It could be a wired telephone like we had the landline phones. Maybe a few of you still have landline phones at your places, and then we now have those mobile phones and Wi-Fi, those Wi-Fi connected non-wired devices. So we have ample of kind of telephones that are there in today's era, wherein yes, some people are using the wired instruments, and then there are people who are not using the non-wired communication, non-wired instrument for communicating. So this happens to be the channel, the medium of floating the message across that the sender has, and then this message reaches the receiver, who's the person who's there to take the information that is sent by the sender. Now, depending upon who the receiver is it the desired person to whom the sender wished to communicate directly, or is it somebody taking the message on behalf of the receiver? It could be anything. At times, say suppose you're at home and there's a call for your dad and he's not there, so there in that case you will take that message. So if the person wanted to talk to your father, but then because of his absence that very point in time, you were the message taker. So depending upon who the receiver of the call be, then a feedback will be generated. I've not shown the feedback here because now this is a process which is a two-way process. So anyways, if there is a receiver who's receiving the call, who's listening to the person speak, then he would have means, the same means by which the sender is trying to communicate to get back to the person there during the call itself. Therefore, I have not shown the feedback, but yes, feedback is very much there in any of the processes that we are involved in today's era at least. So this is how we'll be defining telephonic communication or telecommunication process. Having said that, now let us try and understand as to how do we ace telecommunication. See, to listen to it seems to be a very normal kind of a process which we involve in daily, and there are people who are all the time glued to telephones or mobile phones. So there, for them it may feel that why, and what is the need of taking this particular slide here during the lecture. But then yes, because when you're talking to somebody over the phone, Again, depending upon what kind of communication and with whom you're making that communication, it could be formal and it could be informal as well. Now, if I talk of informal communication, again, because it does not follow any rules, no standards, no formats to be followed, no restriction on the vocabulary whatsoever, and then you don't need not prepare yourself. So there, of course, you are, in a way, you've aced it already. But then when it comes to business, when it comes to the formal setup, the formal setting, there you need to ace the telephonic conversation, because most of the times people, they communicate through a phone only. It is not very feasible for people to come up to directly to that person in physical presence. They would interact. No, that is not really very feasible, right? So because of that kind of thing, the infeasibility, we actually need to ace the telephonic communication when it comes to the formal setup or formal setting. Now, how do we ace it? Again, by consideration. One of the principles of of communication, that you need to do an audience analysis. How would you do the audience analysis? Maybe this is the first time that you're talking to the person over the phone. You haven't met him. So what is it that will make you understand what kind of a person is this, that with whom you're talking, whether for the purpose that you're calling will be done, will be whether will it be fruitful, or you've just wasted your time. So depending on your perception, the image that you create of the person with whom you're talking to will depend the efficiency of the process of telecommunication. And how do we do it? See, whenever we are making any call or receiving any call, the other party, whosoever is there the other end, he or she tries to make a mental picture. He tries to visualize you. Of course, not the way you look, but then yes, the personality can always be in a way imagined by the person who's making or receiving the call. So that mental picture that is created, how is it created? Let us discuss this. The moment you understand that yes, this picture thing is very important, then it will be easy for you to ace telephonic communication. So this picture has been put in capital letters with a purpose, because here we'll be discussing some words that start with the letters that come in picture, the word. And if you understand them well, it will be easy for you to ace it. Like for instance, pitch. We've already discussed that whenever you're talking, whenever you're communicating, it usually means that's verbal. The words that you're speaking contribute only 7% to that communication. The non-verbal aspects of it, they have more weightage. 93% weightage goes to the non-verbal communication. Now, whenever we were discussing that, we said that paralanguage happens to be something that is very important. The way you are saying things, that gives the meaning of the things that you're saying to the party. For example, the way I said, the way you're saying things means I am putting more emphasis on way, means it is more important to be understood here. Likewise, we've discussed kinesics, the movements, we've discussed the proxemics, that is the physical distance. Here we'll be restricting ourselves to paralanguage. If you are good at making a communication and you're effectively doing paralanguage or involving paralanguage in your communication, you definitely will be very efficient when it comes to the telephonic communication. So pitch happens to be the loudness, right? Inflection is, inflection usually is the bend. So the moment you are changing your tone from high to low, that that particular moment when you're doing it is called as inflection. We also can call it as intonation. You're changing your tone from high to low just to emphasize on a particular thing more, and just to not emphasize on things, the other things. So this is inflection, intonation, the change of the sound that you're speaking with. Courtesy, of course, happens to be one of the principles of communication as well, and you need to be courteous. The moment you're not courteous, the person, whosoever is on the other side of the phone, will disconnect the call and would not even tell you or care to tell you that yes, I'm disconnecting it, I don't want to talk to you. The moment the person disconnects, you know that yes, something has gone terribly wrong there. So courtesy happens to be, yes, a mitra. Tone, of course, it has to be subtle. If depending upon with whom you're talking, you can adopt the kind of tones that are there. You could be authoritative in your tone, you could be subtle in your tone, you could always speak in a low tone, depending upon the person. For example, if you're talking to your boss, your tone has to be subtle. If you are the boss and you are kind of warning somebody for the behavior that the person is showing in the organization, then your tone can be a bit on the higher side of it, right? Of course, in that case, your pitch also will be a bit shrill, or maybe it could be heavy. It should be full of gravity at that point in time, wherein you need to show authority. Understanding is important. What is understanding here? First, whosoever is making the call has to understand the purpose behind making it. Whosoever is receiving the call has to understand that what exactly is the sender is trying to communicate to me. So that understanding is very important. Unless it is there, the purpose will get defeated. The purpose of making this telecommunication will get defeated. And then rate of speech, of course, if you are speaking with a high rate of speech involving using a lot of words in 1 minute, in that case the person would not be able to comprehend what you're saying in a good way. Of course, if you're speaking too low when it comes to the rate of speech, the rate of speech if it's too low, in that case again the person would feel that okay, it's a sheer wastage of my time. I don't have that kind of a time. Maybe you're in a meeting and somebody is calling with an extremely low rate of speech. Usually the time that the normal people will take in speaking, um, for a minute, suppose they would convey the entire information, but this fellow who's called up and is using an extremely low rate of speech, in that case the person has only greeted you in a minute. So you can well imagine the mental state of the person. He would be irritated, and then if at all he's an authority and he can afford to, he'll disconnect the call. Otherwise he'll have to patiently bear with it. But then the effectiveness, the efficiency is marred in that case. Therefore rate of speech has to be moderate. You don't have to be over the top, or you don't have to be below a certain rate as well. Enunciation happens to be something very important. Enunciation is how clearly you're pronouncing the things. Pronunciation is something different, that how well are you pronouncing the sound that you're uttering, or for a certain word, how well you're doing it. Enunciation is how well are you articulating your voice, the pronounced words, how well are you articulating them. So this happens to be the picture. Using all these eight seven sorry or using all these 7 points, the person with whom you're talking to, he would know that what kind of a person are you, and these points will help him create that mental picture of yours while you're making a communication with somebody. So you need to understand all these points and incorporate these points whenever you're talking to somebody over the phone. Now this process of communication using telephone can have 3 phases. One, when you're using a telephone to place a call or to make a call, you're the person who's dialing, who has the information, the sender, and you're trying to place a call to somebody. So that is one particular way in which you can send the information. And then of course the other way the process can be defined is the that you are at the receiving end. You're the receiver of the message that the sender is trying to send across to you, or you're answering the call. And then third would be, other than the making call or placing or receiving call, yes, there can always be people who are taking the message on behalf of somebody. And these three then happen to be the ways in which we can use a telephone for making a communication. Either you can make call, or you can receive call, or yes, you can take the message on behalf of somebody. Now we will try to discuss each and every of these three ways in detail, so that you know that why exactly having a certain kind of etiquette is required here, so that you know what exactly will be treated as an etiquette, what has to be avoided, what has to be done, the do's and don'ts. All the things will now be discussed after this slide. Let us discuss making a call first. Making a call means you're placing a call to somebody, you're dialing the number, you're the sender of the information. So first of all, before starting to make a communication, what you need to do is you need to prepare well. You need to prepare well because it is a formal communication that we're talking about. And whenever we talk of formal, we need to practice, we need to collect a lot of data, authenticate it, rehearse it. And then once we are ready with, yes, this is the information that I need to float across, and you validated it, only then should you start to place a call. Now you have gathered all the correct information, complete information, it has clarity, you know your audience well, or maybe if it's the first time, you know how do you have to modulate your tone, pitch, what way do you need to communicate the things. So every homework of yours is done, and then you're ready to make a call. Now you dial the number. Before dialing the number, again, because I'm saying that you need to be considerate, you need to analyze your audience, at least if not the audience, you need to know the physical parameters involved in communication. Physical parameters would mean the location of the person, the time zone of the person to whom you're making the call to. So the location or the time is required for you to know, because it should not be that you're dialing somebody's number and there the person is deep asleep, because we have time zones. So you need to have a clear idea of the time zone of that particular person's place. Only then will you be making a call. If you are here in India and you're trying to make a call to somebody in Canada, you need to know that yes, there's a difference of they lag with say 11 and a half hours. So you need to know that if it is say 8 in the morning, there it would be, maybe it's late night or whatever it's or maybe if you are dialing a number in the evening, there the person would have, maybe he or she is busy in the office hours. So there you need to consider that international time zones, also the differences of the time from your place to other place, and only then will it be suitable for you to make a call. The call should not be a disturbing call to somebody, because anyways if you're calling in your and you're in a formal setup, it is for a purpose. If you have the very first time, before even picking the phone, if the person has gotten offended because you've disturbed his sleep, maybe he was sleeping after 2 days of a very hectic schedule in the office, and you've disturbed it in midway, of course your work is never going to be done. Therefore it is important for the caller, for the person who's making the call, placing the call, to know the difference in the timings, and then it is when, and he's to finalize as to what would be the suitable time. Right now, while you're making the call, again audience analysis would be there in every step. You need to be sensitive to the customs that the person follows, the culture that the person is from, and only keeping those things in mind that are considered to be good as customs, or that are considered to be uh, maybe that'll help the person who's receiving the call to assume that yes, you're a well cultured and mannered person. Only those things are to be uh, used while you're making a communication. So you need to be very sensitive at it. And then ideally, though usually we don't follow this, but ideally what has to be done is, before making a call, you need to prior inform the person. You need to either message the person to whom you'll be calling to, or maybe you'll shoot a mail to that person. You'll draft a mail and send it across to that person that yes, this is the time that I would be calling you. If in case it is visible, let me know, please acknowledge. And if it is not visible also, then you're requested to acknowledge. So this is how exactly a formal communication will go, because when it comes to formal, you need to be very prim and prom. You can't afford to go wrong anywhere, right? Therefore it is always advised and desired that before placing a call, if possible, you need to drop the person a message or a mail telling him, informing him that yes, you'll be calling, and asking for the feasibility or the convenience, both. And then we always say that while you're making a communication, and no matter which position you are at, which position would mean whether you are a sender or a receiver, you need to always use the simplest of the words of the language that you're using. This particular communication process, as I said already, is not to impress. You don't have to impress anybody with the heavy kind of words, the flashy words. It has to be simple, because if it is not simple, if the words that you're using are new to somebody, that somebody does not know the meaning of that word, in that case your purpose will get defeated badly, because you would have searched for those heavy fancy words, you would have wasted a lot of time, and now the person has not understood them, and neither were you able to create an impression. The person would have said that, oh, such a bad kind of choice that the person has while using the words in a formal setup. Because while you're talking in a formal setup, the words, they don't really count. Yes, they would count if they're simple, if they have if there are certain words that are dual or more than two meaning words. So there you need to choose the words very attentively, so that there is no ambiguity in the mind of the person whosoever is listening to those words, as to what was your meaning, your intention behind putting that word. What meaning did you want to use the word for? So use a simple language, it always wins the heart. You don't have to use those flashy, wordy kind of words, some complex kind of vocabulary, because there the chances of misunderstanding or no understanding at all would arise and will be more. So use a simple language, don't use the complex one, because it is not to impress, it is to express, and you'll be able to express yourselves well only when you use the simple words that are common to everybody. Everybody uses those words in day-to-day life. And then, see, whenever we are saying that you're talking over the phone, does not mean that because you're talking over the phone, the person is not able to see you, you don't have to be positive. You need to be positive, keep a positive atmosphere, because you derive a lot of energy from the positive things around you. And the moment you have positive energy within you, only then will you be sounding positive. And it is important for you to sound positive while you're talking over the phone, because the person, this happens to be here a big kind of drawback, because the person is not able to see you. Then he will, because of all the things that you're doing, from the things that you're doing, he will try to create a picture of you. And if you're not sounding very positive, even if you are, because the person is not physically present there to know that exactly, yes, this is how it is and the things are positive, so you need to sound positive as well. How will you sound positive? By keeping good things. And you would have seen this also, that in a formal setup there are people who would keep the pictures of their family. They will have those very nicely decorated seating places, the cubicle that they're sitting. They'll have themes weekly. And they will celebrate occasions or festivals in the office or in the corporate world. That is because it gives you a lot of positive energy. It maintains a healthy and a positive atmosphere, and only when the atmosphere of your working place is positive will your communication be efficient. Therefore, keep a positive atmosphere around you and draw some positive energy from it. Don't be a negative person, because it is all visible. Because it, as we've said, 93% of the communication that we're making is the non-verbal. You're not speaking it through words, it is the way you're doing it that counts. And then, yes, simultaneously being positive, together with being positive, you need to also be enthusiastic. By enthusiastic, I don't mean that you need to start jumping or maybe laugh at things. No, it has to be that energy, that delightfulness, that cheerfulness, it has to be visible in your tone. It should not sound that somebody is beating you up to make that call and you're forced to make that call. It should not sound that. You can very well get to know, if everybody talks over the phone with the people you're very well acquainted with, and if at the moment you're not well, maybe you're trying to hide. Suppose you're living in a hostel, and I guess everybody who has been ever in a hostel would relate with me here, that if you're living in a hostel and your dad or your mom calls up, and if you're maybe feeling low about something bad has happened, maybe your grades have fallen or your friends have ditched you, or it could be anything, so that even if you try to cover it up, they will understand it. That is because of the non-verbal aspects. You can't really, if you're not good at it, you will not be able to master it. Therefore, be enthusiastic, show that you're cheerful about it, slow down your pace. You don't have to be very using a high rate of speech, because the person will not be able to understand things then. And then you need to make yourself sound that you're a positive toned person, and you need to make sure that the sound that you use, the pitch that you use, the tone that you're using, it works for you. you have to use these things as your tools, because you are not visible to the person. Therefore, only the way you're using the words, only the way you're uttering the words would count for you. So in case you're making a communication through phone, you need to always use a tone or a pitch or the sound in a way that it helps you in making the things better. We always say that smile, it doesn't cost you anything. So you can always, while talking, if you smile, it is in a way visible to the person. It gets reciprocated, it reaches the recipient, and the moment recipient receives it, it gets reciprocated to you. And if you're frowning and making a call, the other person would definitely get to know about it. And then while you're speaking, the other party has to concentrate, and if at all there is something that the other party has to say, if even if you have made the call, you need to concentrate on what the other party is saying. Do not ever interrupt the people in between, because that is considered to be rude. You cannot afford to do that. We're talking of etiquette, we're talking of the rules that are required to be followed, the protocols that are required to be followed. One of the protocol here is that you need to always be a good listener. You cannot always be a passive listener. Passive listener means you would only be listening for a certain specific content, otherwise you'll be showing a very negative kind of a body language, you'll try to interrupt. Nothing of that sort has to be done while you're making a communication, either making a call or placing or receiving a call. And then once you're done, you need to also make sure that whether the person with whom you intended to talk to was the person to whom you talked to. So there you need to confirm, if there was a certain other person who was taking the message on behalf of somebody, then you need to, before disconnecting the call, you need to ask the person to repeat that, could you please repeat whatever I said, could you also repeat my number, so that I know that yes, my message has been properly taken, and the person knows that on which number to return the call to. So this is an important practice. Maybe there are a few of you who think that now these days we have mobile phones. Now, why do we take the person's number? It is important because if there is any message taker who's taking the call, it could be that during the day he has received five. And if he's not taking down the number along with the message, the person will get confused as to which person on which number communicated what. Therefore, that is required. So as a person who's making a call, you need to make sure that your message has been well taken, your number has been noted down, so that you are positive that the person, whosoever was the person with whom you intended to talk to, whenever he gets the message, he will return a call to you. And then in case you had asked somebody to take messages on your behalf, the moment you get them, if there was anybody who wanted you to return the call, you need to do that during the same business day. You don't have to make any delays in that. Anyways, you're late because you were not there in the office because of course, some important other work. But then, even if you were busy, the moment, the day you get that message that this person wanted you to call him back, you need to do that in the very same day. Because whosoever the message taker be, he would definitely tell the person who's calling that, okay, maybe the boss is not here, he'll be back in 2 days. Now he has made a mindset that maybe after 2 days I will get a call. And if you have ignored it, the message taker told you that yes, you need to place these calls to these numbers, and you've ignored it because maybe you were very tired of the travel, or maybe you had some very important thing on your schedule. But still, if you've forgotten it, or maybe if you've ignored it, the other person is still waiting for your call, and then it is not a healthy sign for developing the business. And then once all these things are done, you need to always send a follow-up mail to confirm that the things that were agreed upon on the telephone, or maybe also to reinforce that whatever information that you had wanted to convey, it has been conveyed in the same and correct way. So this is how the process of making a call goes. These are the steps that you need to follow. So now you can understand that while you're making an informal call, you need not consider all these things. But while you're making a formal call, while you're in a formal setup, that is why we say it is a complex thing, because there you need to always be vigilant of the things happening in and around. You need to use a tone even if you don't want to. You don't have any choice. You need to be positive also. You need to be enthusiastic also. You need to smile while speaking, and that reaches the recipient. So this is how you'll be making a call or placing a call whenever you're doing it in a formal environment. We'll be covering only this much for this presentation. For the next lectures, we'll be discussing again the same kind of process of receiving a call. What are the etiquette that you need to follow, the rules and protocols that you need to follow, and then of course we'll be discussing that what is the role of the message taker, how is it to be taken, and how is it to be given to the concerned person, and what is the concerned person desired to do as and when he receives the message. So with this, I will treat this as my closing remark. Thank you so much. Have a nice day ahead.